All right, so yeah, I'm Mike Moore, work for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife here in Klamath Falls. I'm the Assistant District Wildlife Biologist, meaning I deal mostly with upland critters, furs and feathers, basically. So I'm not very literate when it comes to fish, but I'm happy to forward on any fishing questions you might have or requests. So what we have to offer is, to speak frankly, it's pretty small potatoes compared to a lot of these other programs. We wear a lot of different hats, we do a lot of different things, but one of the objectives is habitat uplift and habitat improvement for Oregon's native species. And one common way that we do that is through providing seed to landowners. In this case, in a lot of your lands that have experienced the 242 fire, or even lands that haven't, that are enrolled in some of these programs, that perhaps there's been trees that piled, there's burn scars, perhaps equipment has gone in there to do some of this mechanical removing, and there's been a little bit of soil disturbance. And seed, that's a great opportunity to have seed go in there, and we use native seed, but we also use desirable seed, which isn't necessarily native. But it's not noxious, it's not on any of the county weed lists or the state weed lists, and it does provide a benefit. So we regularly provide seed to the public in these type of cases. Most of our funding is dedicated towards private lands. We have worked with other agencies and collaborate on some projects, but there's a lot less paperwork. It's quite a bit easier to procure. We have like I said, we have a pot of money. We can put an order in, and you come pick it up. It's pretty much that easy. And a lot of these programs, somebody had teed up a cost share with it. A lot of these, there is some sort of match associated with it, and so this kind of helps offset some of that match. The value of the seed as well, if the seed is put on by yourself, that can act as match as well. So sometimes being able to connect the dots, this is one way to be able to do that. We really don't have much of an opportunity with herbicides. In some cases, like cheatgrass and moosehead, I don't know how prevalent it is in this area. Sometimes they want to come in, post disturbance. Because of our funding source, we're pretty limited on where we can get that. If that's of a high importance, I can look into it more. The pots of money that I know of right now are federal funds, and federal funds can't do herbicide. But we may have some dedicated state funds if that is a priority, and you're looking at doing something like that. I'll definitely look into that more. The other opportunity potentially is fences. We regularly try to find, if it makes sense, if say some of the fences got burned up that are minimizing wildlife passage, potentially there might be an opportunity to be able to provide some supplies to retro those to wildlife-friendly fences. And wildlife-friendly is basically like a four-strand fence. You have it high enough so fawns can go under it, and low enough to where the deer can jump over it. I think it's like 16 inches off the ground, and again 44 inches, no more than 44 inches high. So that basically is what we have to offer. If there is any interest in that, the phone number is on here, and I encourage you can reach out to me directly, and then we can talk about what you have, and I can try to put a big order together for something like that. Questions?
What kind of seeds?
That's a good question. We, like I said, we have native and non-native in there. There's some of them that we really want to be able to compete with cheatgrass, like a crescent wheatgrass, basin wild rye. There's some bluegrass we can put in there. Generally, we're going to put some legumes as well. Like there's a couple different varieties of burnet we'll put in there. Dryland alfalfa works really good as well. Orchard grass, it's cheap and it's like crack for deer now. They love it. So that's another one we throw in the mix, and it's readily available. A lot of the natives, we tend to prefer them, but they're a lot of times really hard to come by, especially, after the fire season. Some agencies are bound by needing to be native, so it's hard to get some of them. And so we're able to procure some of these other ones a little bit more readily, and if it's on private land, then you're not necessarily bound by certain policies. Other questions?
I guess this would be, I'm sorry, whoever's going to talk about it. Well, this is more of a general question for everyone, so I just keyed in on when you're talking about cost sharing and basically sweat equity. And it sounds like a lot of the programs with cost sharing, how would somebody go in and include, how would you document or include sweat equity as part of the cost sharing?
That's a good question, and
And I'd throw that out to all the grantors.
when we use it as a match, we follow the Bureau of Labor and Industry Standards. So it depends on the level of skills. So if you're going out spreading seed, that's going to be the lowest level, and I believe, I haven't looked for a while, that's somewhere in the tune of $27 an hour. Seems pretty high for just spreading seed, but it does count as a match. If it's more mechanical, if you need to have some particular skills associated with it, suppose you're using a tractor, well, then it's going to bump it up even more. So if you start thinking about how much time you spend out there, you can build up match pretty fast. Did anyone else want to chime in who's worked with match some of these agencies?
So I think it's going to depend on the program. A lot of different programs will have different match options. And I think if anybody's got any questions about that, talk to the specific program representatives, because it will vary depending on the program quite a bit. What you can do, what you can't do, what counts, what doesn't count. So I'd urge you guys to deal with the program representatives directly, because they'll be able to answer that question maybe more specifically to your needs.
Good. Thank you, Brad. Other questions?
Got any suggestions for the noxious weeds, like, except for having the pesticides?
No. It's, I know there's a lot of sensitivity to herbicides, and I can certainly appreciate that. But it is a great tool. The other option is really just getting very competitive other plants to outcompete them. There is, and I probably shouldn't even say this because it's not really my bailiwick, but 3 or 4 years ago when I worked in a different office, it was not an herbicide, there was something else that was coming out on the market which was supposed to be effective, but against annuals, and it was like a ruster or something like that. But at that time it hadn't got approval through who approves the herbicides, the Oregon EPA or whatever. So it's been a number of years. I haven't looked at it. I don't know if that's an option, but if someone else knows of something besides just having competitive plants and herbicide, then feel free to speak up.
There are boots for hire. I'm serious. I actually looked into that because we have a terrible problem with cheatgrass in our neighborhood. And it didn't really go anywhere, but with more research you do that. Yeah, they call them, I think they're called contract grazers. And they'll actually bring, and if you look in, what's the Ag Mag or Cattle Mag, the ones that give away free at the grocery stores, there is an article on those. And they'll actually bring, depending on the size of the property, they'll bring them in, fence them in. And I called the extension service about that. Is there anyone here from OSU Extension? Okay.
Actually, I wear a lot of hats.
Okay.
Actually, I was going to speak on behalf of them.
Okay, but I did talk to Ian there, and he said, well, I kind of know some things, we'll have to do some research, and I never followed up on it. But that is an option. What's that?
I'll follow up on it.
Okay,
I'll make sure
that-
he gets back to you, because
I know
like
there's
a lot of
some-
these, we've been, as OSU's been out of the office for months and months and months, working from home, and sometimes things get
Sure.
pushed to the back burner.
Mhm.
I'll make sure and follow up on that, because that is a really prevalent program other places in the nation. So it would be interesting to see what we have available to us in this area.
Sure. And that wouldn't necessarily work on like a quarter-acre parcel. It wouldn't be cost-effective. But again, talking about getting your neighbors involved, if you had 5 acres or 10 acres, get some goats in there, get fertilizer in there, that's shrimp on.
You can rent boots.
Yeah, you can rent goats. There's one over at, it's pretty far away, I think it's in Surprise Valley, but there are, it would be something to research certainly.
Cool, well, thank you. Anything else